Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and as always, it's freaking amazing to be with you. Guys, this is part 2 of the Ontology Trust Network explanation, unpacking. I am a massive fan of Ontology, so I wanted to make sure I go into detail. So for those who are wanting a really short video that's only 5 minutes long, this is not for you. This is actually going to go much deeper into that and unpack why the heck Ontology is a freaking champion trust system. So guys, the next thing in terms of the whole value is talking about, again, the Ontology decentralized protocol. We've talked about that. It has infinite scalability when it's applied in the context of the internet. But more importantly is that there is a pluggability aspect of this, meaning that, again, as I was saying, that you can plug in from different sources, from old tech and new tech. So you could literally, technically, from the standpoint of the design, certainly things like Facebook could be pluggable. Things like YouTube could be, could actually access this technology, but also all the different blockchains that are emerging. So we could all, from the white paper, they've explained that even proof of work and proof of stake can actually plug in as well, and that's massive because Bitcoin will be able to plug in and utilize this Ontology decentralized protocol. And I just want to make it really clear, some really smart people in blockchain, I have literally read indications that that is going to benefit certain generation 1 blockchains. And I'm not going to be saying exactly who and what I'm saying. Well, I'm going to be a bit enigmatic about this, but what I can tell you is that there are certain generation 1 and 2 blockchains that are going to really benefit from this. So here's some examples of the different ones that can plug in. So BCH could plug in, Ethereum could plug in, BTC could plug in, Qtum could plug in, ICX, etc. So this Ontology decentralized protocol is not to be considered to be something trifle or simple. It is something that is extremely important for the overall ecosystem of blockchains. So really cool. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is the digital identity aspect of this in terms of registry. So without going into too much detail, registration is going to become an imperative because it provides for investment trust. Because as you guys know, without trust in banks, banks just don't work because people won't use them. And this is actually really, in many ways, it's an experimentative technology because never before in history has this kind of inverted distribution ever happened. It's always been generally centralized. But to have this inversion, this flippening of business transactions, to completely flip the thinking and the frame of how business can operate in a decentralized means, really up until this point has been considered to be quite outlandish, particularly from the business community, because and from JD, who I don't like to even mention in his comments, but what is important is that we recognize that now it's finally viable through modes of trust. And this is the first inference of it going to, become a forefront technology for enterprise. So then we go on to the next thing, which is looking at the identity. So Ontology, you can see here that it's going to register identities. There's no question that they are doing that. And that's where the key fits in. And I'll be talking about the key in a separate video, but the key is a layer inside Ontology. Then there's got the distributed data exchange, and this is absolutely massive. Once again, there's some really good examples of this, but basically it's again distributing data out, allowing data to transact in the overall robust system that they've designed. And then there's things like equity management, which is a really important thing when you want to talk about storing value. We often hear that SOV term, but this is about making sure that there is a value point and that there's records of that value. Decentralized community capabilities are extremely important because basically, unlike service providers today, Ontology networks provide frameworks for communities. So that's a buzzword when you look through the white paper, because they can run purely through decentralized mechanisms and systems inside the overall overarching network. So there's many more that you can find out about as well. You've got distributed community management, reputation systems, distributed content generations, and it goes on and on. But the key to remember here is distributed information, distributed content, distributed data, and also to recognize that it's the house for identities as well. In terms of, it's not a service provider, it is a network provider. And that's important to distinguish. So it's a distributed infrastructure. And perhaps the biggest and most important word through it is distribution. And that's why, again, there's the clue with the NEOX if you go deep into it, because there is a distributed feature of NEOX. And again, NEOX is the key in the public domain, because on-chain already has its facilities for the enterprise, and there's going to be this bridge that Dar has constantly talked about. If you've ever listened to any of his videos. So compliance is another feature which is really important, because again, what it does is it helps for the verification and provide data systems that are compliant within the various legal frameworks. So again, reinforced by things like taxation, legislation, verification through legal documentation. All of that is going to be sort of bound up in this compliance facility. So it's going to be cross-industry, cross-legal, and cross-region. It's absolutely massive. So there's articles and quotes on the internet. I'll provide you with all these links as well if you want to know more. There's a brilliant one from Da Hongfei, and this is what Da said. He said, Ontology is a network that turns ordinary data into tradable data assets. The public platform allows individuals and businesses to securely access untapped personal and commercial data for exchange. So again, it's about that access point. It's about the access point of trust to give the all tick for application in the real world. And that is what makes a smart economy. So how does this relate to NEO? And this is an absolutely huge question. So what I want to do is talk to you and unpack a few things that I found. And I'm going to talk to you a lot more about it through another video I'm going to do about the response to the AMA. But the good news is today I actually was in contact directly with the Ontology Network, and they have provided key responses to my own personal questions that I'm going to relay to you as well. So before I do that, these are some key responses that came up in terms of from qualified people with the response. And the first one is responding to the question, what's the difference between Ontology, NEO, and on-chain? So here it says that Ontology and NEO are separate projects, and that is true. They are separate businesses and separate entities. Just like on-chain is separate as a private consortium blockchain enterprise, and NEO is the public counterpart as a community-driven project. That's how that works, and then these two are separate again. So Ontology separate to NEO. At the distributed ledger smart contract, Ont and NEO have similar architecture, and that is true as well. So on one hand, you have Ont, which runs on the Go language, and then you have NEO, which runs on C#. That's at the ledger level, okay? So that's different to the consensus protocol, or the consensus mechanism we're talking about. That's different again. But at the ledger level, you've got Ont, Go, and you've got NEO for C#. At the protocol and application level also, that's reflected, and NEO focuses on digital assets. So this is where a lot of people are getting confused, is that many people think, oh, well, because there's these three parts, and now this is focused on ID, then NEO is somehow not going to have the ID component, and that's not how it's going to work. All that will happen is that the ID component, which is an imperative for NEO, will actually work in concert with the facilities offered by the system. So it's a way for NEO to plug in this feature of digital identity and work in and synergize with Ontology. Hey guys, sorry about that. The camera went flat, so I just had to go and fix all that up, but let's get back into it. So guys, just getting back across to the talk about Go language, as you know, as I explained, is that Ont or Ontology is going to be working at the ledger level with the Go protocol, and juxtaposed with that is the C# ledger level use that NEO will employ. But then on the separate level, when we're talking about consensus protocols, they are different again. But what is important to recognize, I think, is that there is a synergy. There's a relationship in terms of language between Ont, Go, and on-chain at ledger level. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I wanted to just put forward some key points that I found as in relation to this statement, and also from my own knowledge. And that is that the first one is that NEO and Ont are definitely separate entities. They're separate projects. They're separate. One is a viable VC-backed company, and one is a community-driven project. The next one is that NEO and Ont can cross-communicate. They can interact. And that is absolutely true, and to the degree in which they can interact is going to be based on future knowledge as well, but certainly the indicators are there that NEOX is going to be influential in that process. They are separate and distinct entities as well. They are not the same company. On-chain is a VC-backed company, as I said, by Fosun. NEO is a public blockchain ecosystem, and that's a very important thing because that's where the decentralized model sort of applies to business. But again, the anomaly was always, well, if it is a public domain and it's a public blockchain, how on earth are they going to trust how a business is going to trust NEO. And that was always the issue I couldn't understand. But now I understand with this trust mechanism that that's how it's going to work. Ontology is important. It's a public ecosystem. Again, it's separate to NEO, but it is the trust system. It is the trust eco. It is not, you know, a finite blockchain. DNA is the protocol for on-chain's enterprise. And that's really important because if you want to understand on-chain, you have to understand DNA. Because DNA is the language that on-chain want to sell on to other businesses so that every time another blockchain, no matter what company it is, uses DNA, there's revenue. So that's a financial gain for on-chain. And remember, it's owned by Da Hongfei as a separate enterprise venture. DBFT is the protocol for NEO's blockchain, for NEO's public blockchain. And ONT is written in Go, and NEO is written in C# at the ledger level. Both are infrastructure platforms, except that remember, when I talk about platform, it's just a system when I'm talking about ontology. I'm not talking about a blockchain per se. 10, each supports different dApps. Now that's extremely important because NEO contracts are going to be utilized on ontology. So there will be a facility in place whereby there's a beneficial mutual agreement where ontology again will have this inbuilt capacity to support NEO. 11, they represent different scenarios. So one is premised on the idea of mapping and hyperconnecting through distributed methodologies of distributed data and distributed identity. And then 12, NEOX allows for the cross-chain interoperability. It allows for on-chain to interoperate with NEO. 100% sure of that. Da has said that many times, but my supposition is that that's also going to influence ontology in some degree because it is bifurcated into distribution and asset, and that's the two buzzwords for NEO and ontology. Okay, so just to get back into this, I want to talk to you about some key quotes from other people. For example, to clarify things, we have the CEO, Catherine from The Key, and what she's explained is that The Key will share the consensus with ontology, and how The Key works is that it will essentially, it won't disaffect the identity component of NEO. It'll actually strengthen it because it will consolidate it, it will itemize it, and it will house it. So there's a fundamental layer built at the basis of ontology, and that's The Key. That is literally the company called The Key. And that provides for security and information that NEO rely on, and they rely on that business agreement to then go out and garner business in the real world. So that's just important. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just, again, to sort of show some credibility for both myself and NM as well, because we talk quite a lot through Twitter. And if you haven't got on Twitter, guys, we pump so much information into Twitter as much as we can. I spend hours and hours now because it's a great conduit for the community, and I really want to help as much as I can. And I would hope that more people jump on board and get involved, because it's a great way to promote a community-driven system. And that's how it builds. That's a fundamental for investment as well in this new decentralized method. Okay, so the other thing, again, is to talk about NEOX. And I've talked about that at length, but this is to sort of provide some sort of professional perspective on how important NEOX is. This was presented by Malcolm Lorida, who is a very, very intellectual guy. He knows a great deal about the protocol levels of NEO. He's an expert in blockchain, and essentially he was delivering a speech to explain how on-chain is going to work. How NEOX is going to work. And if you look at this graphic, it starts to put things together. Firstly, you have digital assets, and we know that's a buzzword for NEO. Secondly, you have digital identity, and we know that that's perhaps a very simplistic term to represent ontology, because we know that there's an aspect of digital identity with NEO, and that's where we need to focus. So ontology is not necessarily directly referenced here. This is all about NEO, but what is important is that all three of these things can interact beyond the point of NEO via NEOX. So again, given that it's bifurcated into two parts, given that there's a distribution and asset, it's something that I'm really excited to hear about later on. And finally, I want to talk about dApps and ecosystems. This is really exciting. Right now we have a huge list. I haven't put affiliate in there, but I will add it. But here you can see that there's some fantastic dApps that are coming. And when we talk about dApps, we aren't necessarily just talking about projects. Sometimes, as you can see from Ontology being here, they are far-reaching and they are ecosystems, or they are even bigger in the sense of architectural frameworks. So by degree, you don't know by having a look at the list just how good some of these are, or how magnanimous they can actually be. But what is important is to recognize that in the last month, you've seen the evolution of many different projects, some very, very large ones. The rate in which this is going to expand is really difficult to relay. I can't really present, the emotion. I don't want to do that. I want to be rational, but I can see quite rationally that the scope of this is beyond belief. And one day we will look back at these videos, I think, and other people will too, and laugh, because this is such a small list in comparison. But it's exciting because you have projects from all different industries, and I won't go through them today, but if you want to go in and check them out, go to our Twitters, go to our YouTubes. I have so many different YouTubes about NEO, but I'll be talking more and more about these projects in the future. So it's really interesting as well. And the other thing I want to talk to you about was perhaps the thing I was most waiting for. As I said, literally right now it should be happening. The AMA questions have dropped into the NEO Reddit. So if you haven't jumped across the NEO Reddit, do that soon so you can read it. But these are the posts I want to put in of my own personal questions that were answered by the Ontology Network. And this is what I wanted to relay to you as sort of like exclusive news, that's come from them as well. So I asked them, are they a private or trusted architecture or a public architecture? And Ontology, and you noticed I had to amend that because I wanted to make sure I give you the qualified response, is that they are a public platform and they are running a platform. Are there any other projects wanting to use the architecture other than NEO? And this is why that pluggability is really important, because these responses are directly from Ontology, not from me, and they said yes, that's what's going to happen. I asked them how many companies are using DNA at the moment, and they said around 10. And that's very interesting if you think about it, because that's 10 private blockchains. I would imagine some of them are absolutely massive, using the DNA protocol. The other one was, will Ont use government-related projects in the future? And this is what Ontology Network said. We cannot confirm for now. We cannot confirm for now. That sounds really interesting. The ledger protocol of DNA is written in Go, and Ont's ledger, I asked them, like Ont's ledger protocol, right? And the answer was yes. Ontology architecture includes many parts. The ledger is just one of those parts. The ledger will be an enhanced version of DNA. So the ledger will be an enhanced version of DNA. Guys, that's massive. Is Ontology underpinned by permissioned, meaning trusted, meaning privatized? Is Ontology underpinned by private protocols as a trust ecosystem? And I wrote, the pluggability of outside chains will feed into NEO. Is that right? And this is what they said. They said yes. The chained network protocols can link other chains and systems to NEO as well. Massive. Is old technology such as Facebook or Google supported? Yes. So it's freaking awesome! I love those answers from Ontology. Thank you. I wanted to say a massive thank you to Ontology Network for trusting me, for interacting, and for answering those questions. I absolutely appreciate it. And you have my trust as well. And hopefully I am building mine with you as well, in this process. Well, guys, I'm pretty sure that's it from me. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for, if you have liked my Twitter, if you have checked out my YouTubes, if you've subscribed, you're a friggin' legend, because I don't get any money from this other than monetization. And as I've said to many people, the monetization goes straight into NEO that I want to pump back into prizes, and I've been flat out with research. Guys, Ontology has taken up a lot of my time recently. I love it. I think it's an amazing project. Check it out. But until next time, it's BlockchainBrad signing out. Cheers.